I love the 12-team college football playoff, but I also hate the 12-team college football playoff at the exact same time, and I'm going to explain why. I'm a positive guy. Let's start first with the positives. Home playoff games. I watched all four of them. I watched all four of them this weekend, of course, on Friday night. And then, of course, you look forward to those Saturday games. The environments were amazing. The environments were crazy. You saw all four of the home teams win in the first round of the college football playoff. Yeah, that home field advantage certainly must mean something. And one thing that college football, the highest level of college football, has lacked for a long period of time, and this is even sitting from a chair of privilege, even sitting talking about the Big Ten Conference, I can appreciate the access and the opportunity that it gives some of the other conferences, that it gives the ACC, that it gives the Big 12, that it gives the Group of Five. College football really has had a postseason problem really forever. Right, of course, we had bowls and polls, nobody like that. So we got to have computers figure it out to see who's going to play for the national championship, to see who's going to be number one, to see who's going to be number two. They didn't like that, so they hired a committee to run a 4-team invitational. They didn't like that because it excluded multiple conference champions. And now you have this 5+7 model. We know the format needs to be worked out a little bit because this model was made originally as a 6+6 model. Access and opportunity. Okay, this is not about finding the 12 best teams. I know there's been national people with much bigger platforms than I that have said this. But that's not what this 12-team college football playoff is about. In the 4-team era, it was they hammered this home. We're all about finding the 4 best teams in college football to play it off on the field. Now, it's about conference championships and then finding the next best teams after that and putting them into a tournament, certainly at the end. Now, where did a lot of this negativity come from? Because, look, I know you've seen it. I've certainly seen it. Kirk Herbstreit is one of these guys. And then you can kind of list off a number of national commentators. They're not talking about how Notre Dame was able to be extremely physical and run the football and how good Notre Dame looked. Yeah, they ain't talking about that. They're not talking about how Penn State, despite playing a B game, had an A+ result and won by 4 scores against SMU. They're not talking about the difference between the Big Ten runner-up and the ACC runner-up and the gap within conferences. No, they're not talking about that, right? They're talking about format. They're talking about specifically Indiana. Indiana is really a lightning rod for all of the negativity surrounding the college football playoff. There have been people out there that says Indiana's a fraud, and I might even agree with you. But this is what the 12-team college football playoff, the access that it provides, the opportunity that it provides. It provides someone like Indiana, which certainly has not had the strongest schedule in the world, to be able to battle it out, to really confirm, to really figure out, okay, this is an Indiana team that's boat raced a lot of teams that are sitting around the 500 marker, a lot of teams that haven't been very good this season. Let's put them into a playoff. They've earned that opportunity. Whoever you listen to, and no matter what they tell you, Indiana earned the opportunity compared to what was going on in the rest of college football. I will certainly get to that here in just a minute. But this is an Indiana team that their story and what exactly happened with them and their narrative throughout the season really fits in to that access and that opportunity that the 12-team college football playoff provides. Through all of these systems that we've had throughout the years, there have been teams on the outside looking in And there's been teams a lot better than the Indiana Hoosiers that have been on the outside looking in over the years. USC in their heyday with Pete Carroll were left out of this thing. How about 2004? The Auburn Tigers, God forbid, an undefeated SEC champion. Can you imagine that? We're probably looking more towards the 4-team era. Can you imagine an undefeated SEC champion not being able to play for the national title? Can you imagine what would happen? Close your eyes and try to imagine, because it's a fantasy land. Because it would never happen in today's format with the influence that 4-letter network on your screen certainly has right now. And then you get to those Boise State teams, Dan Hawkins, you look at Chris Peterson, of course, when he eventually became the head coach, TCU before they joined the Big 12. Those last two examples, Boise State defeating Oklahoma in that Fiesta Bowl. You look at TCU, I know this all too well, TCU defeating Wisconsin in that Rose Bowl. Folks, Cinderella isn't something that is as prevalent in college football that it is in college basketball, mostly because it has not been allowed to happen. But a lot of what ifs that exist in college football surround, man, what if Boise State had opportunities to be able to play and be in a tournament in that championship when they were during their heyday with Chris Peterson over there, those Gary Patterson TCU teams when they were playing in the Mountain West, right? What would be the story with all of that? What if they had access? What if they had opportunity? What if they had inclusion? You look at a team like the TCU and what they were able to do. Now, they were in a power conference certainly at this point, but knocking off Michigan a few years back, and yeah, they got boat raced. And that kind of leads me in to blowouts, because that's a lot of where a lot of the negativity is stemming from. Man, none of these games were competitive. Every single one of these teams was a fraud, right? They didn't deserve to be in the college football playoff. Folks, when it comes to blowouts, has anybody watched the semifinals of the last handful of years in the 4-team college football playoff? All right, maybe last year. Last year we had some great games in the semifinals. But has anybody seen? There's been all kinds of blowouts. All kinds of blowouts. Certainly in the semifinals throughout the history that started in 2014 of the 4-team college football playoff. There are blowouts in the NFL playoffs. The NFL, right? College football is becoming more and more and more like the NFL every single second and minute and hour and day and week and month that goes by. Folks, you're going to watch the NFL playoffs here in a few weeks, and once we get more into January, folks, there's going to be blowouts. Because now you have 14 of the 32 teams in the NFL getting into the playoffs. You've got, 9 and 8 teams getting into the getting into the NFL playoffs? They're going to get blown out by that number 2 seed, folks. It's just going to happen. But just like every other sport, now college football has the access and the opportunity for teams that win their region. In this case, teams that win their conference. In the NFL, teams that win their division get the opportunity to play. Is every single one of those teams, are they all Super Bowl caliber teams in the NFL? No, they're not, because mostly when you look upon league, their postseason is kind of a tool to generate revenue. More games equal more revenue, and I think that's certainly what ESPN and the powers that be certainly looked at with this expanded college football playoff format. But I think even though it is partially financially driven decision, I think that we are going to benefit certainly as time goes by. You might not see it now after you saw a bunch of these blowouts, but you're certainly going to see it down the road. I want to circle back to the Indiana Hoosiers right now, because that's where a lot of this negativity is stemming from. And there's a lot of people out there that are attacking Indiana, that have been attacking Indiana all season. And they are attacking Indiana because they are the rebel right now. Right? They are the basketball school. They're not Michigan. They don't have the winged helmet. They don't have the maize and blue. They're not Ohio State. They're not Penn State. They're that new player. Like, I've been saying it this year, and I'm not the only one that's been saying it so far this season. But if Indiana were Michigan, if Indiana were, I'm going to come out and say it, if Indiana were Nebraska, this would not be a conversation. This would not be a conversation at all whatsoever. But since Indiana is this team that's been bad for so long, the losingest program, right? All of a sudden, people are embedding that into the schedule, and they're kind of combining that and formulating a take saying that they don't belong. Where when you really factor it out, give me an option. All these people that are saying Indiana's a fraud, Indiana doesn't belong. Okay, you can have that opinion. Give me an alternative. It goes with me with any issue. If you have an issue with anything, okay, that's fine. Give me an alternative. Don't just bitch and moan to bitch and moan. Give me a solution. Give me something better. You know why there's no solution with Indiana? You know why nobody's really providing something else? Because nothing else exists. There are really just a handful of teams that were in the conversation, I guess, with someone like Indiana. Like, you look at Alabama. This is a team that lost to Vanderbilt and got boat raced by the Oklahoma Sooners. Yes. Did they win on the field against Georgia? Yes. Should that matter? Absolutely. But everything on the field should matter, Kirk Herbstreit. Everything. This isn't a cafeteria where you can go out and I want to pick out that. I don't want that. I don't want that. Oh, yeah, over here, but I want to pick out that. You can't pick and choose what you want. This is a Thanksgiving table. Everything is on the table. Everything should be for the pickings. Everything should be available to either be praised or to either be critiqued. Did Alabama beat Georgia? Yes. Is that a really good win? Absolutely. But then you look to the other side, and those losses are some of the worst losses for teams that were ranked certainly this season. You look at an Ole Miss that lost to a 7-5 Florida team. They lost to Kentucky. Miami lost to Georgia Tech. They lost to Syracuse. 2 losses with a similar schedule to what IU played. Miami also had close nail-biter comeback type of games against Cal, against Louisville, and against Virginia Tech. When you look at some of those teams and how they fared against 500 middle-of-the-road type of teams, and how Indiana fared against 500 or middle-of-the-road type of teams, Indiana whooped up on those teams. They beat Washington with a backup quarterback by 2 scores. They whooped up on Nebraska. We all know certainly what happened in that particular game. Okay, Michigan wasn't as much of a margin of victory, but they found a way to win. Indiana, folks, Indiana just took care of business where other teams were not able to take care of business. What happens on the field has to matter. Everything that happens on the football field has to matter. You cannot pick and choose what you want to be able to fit your narrative. And this really leans into what I hate about the college football playoff. College football as a whole is turning into something I hate. And maybe it's been like that for a while, but it's very political. It's very political. Of course, you have ESPN and the SEC. We all know that they're in bed together. We all know that they have certainly that exclusive contract right now. But some of the things that their personalities are saying on air during these broadcasts really opens my mind. Like, I already know what I'm getting into when I'm watching these games, but it really opens my eyes, certainly. And they have their narrative. And then maybe Fox over here has their narrative as well. Now you have 2 sets of, and maybe multiple, but 2 sets kind of trying to spin and weave their web to you, the viewers, to try to convince you maybe to change your mind or to maybe change the way certainly you think about the sport right now. And when I watch college football, I want to enjoy college football. I don't want somebody trying to lecture me or trying to change my mind, certainly in what I think. I want to be able to sit there and I want to be able to enjoy the product. The coverage of the college football playoff is what I hate. It was one of the more toxic couple of days that I've really noticed on Twitter as it comes to being a college football fan. And I want to sit there and I want to enjoy this thing, and I'm going to enjoy it certainly as this thing kind of comes along, but it's sitting there and it's really slapping you in the face. It's really slapping you in the face with everything that exists right now. So there are certainly parts of this playoff that I absolutely love. There are also parts of this playoff, man, that just drive me insane. The coverage of the playoff is what is the negative. The access and the opportunity, the home playoff games, those types of things are certainly the positives.
Thanks for watching Big Ten Ted, where it's all Big Ten all year long. Make sure to like the video to spread the word of Big Ten Ted to the masses, and subscribe to the channel for updates on Big Ten content that drops every day.